The long oak dining table stretched from one end of the grand hall to the other, glowing under the soft amber lights of the antique chandelier. Silverware clinked, wine glasses sparkled, and the laughter of a family that wasn't entirely mine rang through the air. Every year, the Reynolds family held a massive dinner on the anniversary of their late parents, Margaret and Thomas Reynolds, the two people who had adopted me when I was just 7 years old. I stood near the entrance, clutching a bottle of wine I had picked up on the way. My hands trembled slightly, partly from the autumn chill and partly from the growing anxiety I could never quite shake around them. "There you are," my cousin Daniel said with a polite smile, glancing up from his phone. "Dinner just started." I nodded and stepped further into the room. Every seat was taken, well, almost every seat. A space at the table stood between my adoptive sister, Clarissa, and her fiancé. I made my way toward it, assuming it had been left for me. But as I pulled the chair back, Clarissa's voice rang out sharp and clear. That's not your seat." Everyone fell silent, even the forks stopped midair. My hand froze on the chair. I looked at her, confused. She gave a cold smile and flicked her hair behind her shoulder. "You should go find another spot. This is family seating." My throat went dry. "I am family." She raised a perfectly sculpted brow. "You were adopted, Emily. You were taken in. That doesn't mean you belong at the center of our family traditions." A few nervous chuckles trickled from the table, like people unsure if this was a joke or not. No one said anything. Not Daniel, not my aunt, not even Uncle Reed, who once told me I was like his second daughter. I glanced at the head of the table, the chair where Dad used to sit, now empty. I stepped back, trying not to let my voice shake. There are other chairs at the side table. Maybe. Before I could finish, Clarissa reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I almost forgot," she said, extending it toward me with a smirk. "This is your share of the expenses. Since you're not officially part of the estate anymore, we've itemized what you owe." I slowly unfolded the paper. A bill, total due, $3, $120. Itemized wine for family events, $4, 180 holiday dinners over the years, $1, $2, 140 lodging during holidays, $6, 100 family gifts you received, 2010, 2022, $8, 100. "You're kidding," I whispered. "You're an adult now," she said coolly. "We're not obligated to cover your costs anymore. Mom and Dad were generous, but they're gone. You should be independent." Something inside me cracked quietly, not loud or messy, just a slow, irreversible break. I turned to the rest of them, hoping, praying someone would stand up, say this was wrong. But they just sat there, eyes down, expressions stiff. A few looked uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to help me. I folded the bill carefully, tucked it into my coat pocket, and nodded. "Thanks," I said, my voice like ice, "for making everything so clear." And then I walked out. I didn't look back, not even when I reached the door and felt the autumn wind hit my face like a slap. My heart pounded, the humiliation clung to my skin like smoke, but underneath it, a different fire started to flicker, slow and angry. She thought I'd go away, that I'd disappear like a stain on their perfect name, but Clarissa Reynolds had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because I was done trying to belong, and I was done being silent. Autumn turned to winter, and winter passed like a bitter storm. I didn't return to the Reynolds estate, not for Christmas, not for New Year's, not for anything. Clarissa's bill, still neatly folded, sat in the top drawer of my desk like a quiet scar. It wasn't about the money. I could have paid it 100 times over. It was the message behind it. You are not one of us. What they didn't realize was that I never wanted to be them. I just wanted to be loved, and for a long time I had been. Margaret and Thomas Reynolds were never anything but kind to me. They didn't have to adopt a girl like me, bruised by foster homes and silent nights. But they did. They gave me more than a home. They gave me belief, until Clarissa slowly began to take it all away. After our parents passed, she was named executor of the estate. I never contested it. I thought family mattered more than money. But she didn't see me as family. She saw me as an intruder, a stain on her perfect life. And while I was grieving, she rewrote the script, one cold exclusion at a time. But the night she gave me that bill, that was the last page of her version of the story. I was ready to write my own. I moved into a small apartment downtown and poured everything I had into building something for myself. I'd always had a passion for design, logos, packaging, brand identity. Within a few months, I launched my own freelance design studio, Inkspire Studio. At first, it was slow. One client a week, then 2, then 5. Then a startup hired me for a full rebrand. Word spread, I hustled, I learned, I made connections, I showed up even when I didn't want to. And somewhere in the blur of it all, I started to shine in a way that no one in the Reynolds family ever thought I could. Success didn't heal the wounds, but it gave me armor. And then, life handed me a twist I hadn't expected. One evening, while consulting for a high-end event planning firm, I came across a portfolio. It was Clarissa's. Her company, Reynolds & Rose, specialized in elite family events, galas, and legacy dinners. She had no idea I was involved with one of their partners. Curiosity turned to instinct. I started digging not out of revenge, but out of something deeper. I wanted to understand what kind of person she really was beneath the perfectly curated image. And what I found, it wasn't just cruel, it was criminal. Clarissa had been cooking the books. She'd been charging family members, especially our older relatives, for estate-related management. Fees that never existed. She'd billed our late parents' trust for luxury spa weekends, designer shopping trips, and even her fiancé's failed business loan. I documented everything quietly: emails, invoices, altered documents, conversations. I created a timeline, labeled every folder, saved backups. I wasn't going to take this to a gossip site or the tabloids. That wasn't my style. But I wasn't going to stay quiet either. I wanted her to feel it, not just in her wallet, but in her heart. To know the taste of isolation, to know what it felt like to be told, "You don't belong here." It all came together sooner than I expected. Exactly 1 year after that dinner, the one where she humiliated me, I received an invitation. Reynolds Family Legacy Dinner, hosted by Clarissa Reynolds. Formal attire required. At first, I considered throwing it away, but then I smiled. Perfect, because this time I wasn't going as the outsider. I was going as the reckoning. The same grand hall, the same golden chandelier, the same table, long and polished and glowing under the candlelight. It had been exactly 1 year since they'd asked me to find another spot, but tonight I wasn't looking for a seat. I was the seat. When I walked in, heads turned. My black velvet dress clung to me like armor. My hair was pinned back with silver clips, simple, sharp, unapologetic. I had walked into that dinner last year as the girl they thought didn't belong. This year, I walked in as a storm they never saw coming. Clarissa's face froze when she saw me, a flicker of forced warmth, then a flash of discomfort. "Oh, Emily, you came. I was invited," I said with a smile. I assumed the seat was mine. She blinked just once. Her fiancé, well, now husband, gave me a once-over and looked away. I didn't wait for permission. I walked to the same chair she pushed me away from last year, and this time I pulled it out and sat. The silence around me was thick, uncertain. Dinner began. The clinking of forks and shallow small talk filled the air. Everyone pretended not to look at me, but they were watching, waiting, wondering, and I let them. I waited until the main course had been served, Clarissa's favorite dramatic moment, when she stood and gave a rehearsed toast about legacy and tradition. She clinked her glass. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. My parents would be proud of how we've preserved the Reynolds name. I stood. She blinked. Emily, would you mind waiting until— No, I said, my voice calm. I think it's my turn. The room froze. Utensils paused midair. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a single white folder, setting it gently on the table in front of me. This, I said, sliding it across the table toward her, is a complete financial report of the last 3 years of estate spending. Clarissa's face tightened. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the spa retreats billed as estate negotiations, the private chef, the shopping trips to Milan, the fact that you used trust funds set aside for family care to bail out your husband's failed crypto venture, all of it, documented, backed up, dated, labeled. Murmurs spread across the table. Daniel leaned forward. Wait, what? I didn't come here to take anything. I continued, but I also didn't come to stay silent. For a year, I let that dinner break me. I let a woman who I once called my sister humiliate me for being adopted, for not being blood. But the truth is, I had more loyalty to this family than you ever did. Clarissa stood, face flushed. This is ridiculous. You can't just barge in and accuse. Oh, I'm not accusing. I said softly, reaching back into my bag. I'm handing over copies of all the evidence to each family member. Legal copies, and yes, I've already submitted them to the estate lawyer. Gasps. Clarissa's hands trembled. You're just jealous. You've always wanted what I have. I stepped closer, calm. No, I wanted a family. You wanted a throne, but you forgot something. I pulled out a small framed paper and set it down in front of her. It was the $120 bill she'd handed me last year, now sealed behind glass. Next to it, I placed a receipt, $31, 200 donation to a children's art foundation in Margaret and Thomas Reynolds' name. I paid your bill, I said, and then I paid it forward. Clarissa's voice cracked. You think this makes you better? No, I said. It makes me free. The room turned against her, not out of spite, but realization. The cousins who once looked away now looked at her with suspicion. The uncles who laughed politely now leaned away from her seat. By the end of the night, she was the one with no place to sit. I didn't stay long. I didn't need to. I said my piece, handed out the evidence, and left with my head high. As I reached the doors, someone called after me. It was Uncle Reed. Emily, he said, eyes soft. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you last year. I paused, then nodded. It's okay, you don't need to say it, but, he said, clearing his throat, just so you know, your seat will always be at the table. I smiled. No, I said, the chair is mine now. And I walked out into the night, the cold air kissing my skin. Not like a slap this time, but a crown.